everybody out there in the computer world land. So we're going to do something totally different this time. So we've got what we have, Uneek Sock Kit. Okay, it comes with 2 of these, and I need you to see that these are pretty identical, and usually you don't see this. Okay, so and then we have 220 yards on one, 220 yards on the other, so they're also identical in length too. And normally they are for knitting pairs of socks that match, and they're called self-striping, because you're going to see that when I show you these socks. It kind of looks like stripes here on my arm, but they actually are consistently the same. You know, it's not one fat stripe, thin stripe. They're all consistent. So what we're trying to do is we're also trying to show how you can weave with this as well as knit with it. We try to be very versatile with the yarn. So if somebody doesn't knit, they want to try to weave it. It is very soft, feels really nice. So anyway, let me show you the socks. And they are what we call self-striping. And if you notice, they match. Most people don't believe me, but these do match. And it's amazing. And so what we're going to try to do is do the warp self-striping. And when we weave it, we're going to do self-striping. So it's going to, we don't know, I've never done this. So I think it's going to be a really neat experiment. And we're going to try to do an 8-inch scarf for you. And we're going to go through the steps of how to line the stripes up to make sure that we each get self-striping. So that's important, because this is a little different technique than weaving. So we're going to transition to a shack loom right now and show you how to do this. All right. So we're using a shack flip loom with a 12 dent rigid heddle. My blue marks here are consistent. First thing I did was find the center, okay, and I know I have a 20-inch reed, so I found 10 inches. And I did put a string here because that's going to come in handy with my self-striping, just to make sure everything's consistent. I know with the yardage on here, 220 yards came down to about an 8-inch scarf. And instead of starting over here and having it off center, I made sure that I'm going to find my 8 inches. So from here, I measured 4 inches to the center here. And then here it's a little bit more, because I'm going to actually use this hole here only, because I like, when I weave on rigid heddle, for my 2 selvages to start hole. So that's the reason why this one's just a smidge more. So now we're going to put this in. It's neutral position, which is so important. Okay, here's a trick on rubber bands, y'all. If you've seen some of the videos I've done, I really like rubber bands. I get tired of having to pick this up. So if you loop the rubber band here and here, this now is stationary, so it's not going to cattywampus on you, if that's a word. All right, so now we're going to start with our ball, and we're going to attach here. And I am going to attach, and I don't know where this one came from. This is something that was left. I'm going to attach here, and I'm going to go through here, and then we're going to go to our peg. All right, so we're going to move the shot back so we can see all this, and then we're going to talk about where to start with the yarn so that it equals out. Okay, so first, to understand this yarn, the way it pools or gradates, okay, there's a section that stays one color. You can see that that's different. That was black. And then the next color, it looks like it's the same as this one, but you know, like I said, I don't know until I pull it out, but they're different. But this is the self-striping. This would be a stripe, this would be a stripe. To work out this so that this is even stripes and not offset, this was not enough for a complete stripe from back here all the way to our peg. So what I'm going to do is I actually stopped right here. All right, so I'm not going to use the first part of it. I'm going to take this off. I cut off the excess because this was not enough to go from the back to the actual peg, about 80 inches. And we're going to kind of fudge that a little bit so that we know that the colors are even on the stripes. It'll make more apparent once we do a couple of these stripes and that you actually see where they do change colors. This is a very soft transition, but when I get to the yellow or the purple, you're going to be able to see that much more readily, and it'll make more sense. But this is what you kind of have to make adjustments in the very beginning to get it right. All right, so then we're going to step back and show you the process. So we're back again. We have the loom and I have a peg about 80 inches, okay, maybe a little further. We're going to fudge the peg back and forth, okay, just to make sure. So I'm starting in here, going to find the slit, grab this, and as I pull, I'm going to come over here and loop it on my peg. a lot of people, when they do this, they want to pull too tight. All right, so what I'm doing right now is kind of slack. I want to look at my color. I'm still in the same color family, but I see right here is where it transitions, okay? So when I'm doing this and I pull this and I'm looking, okay, is it still the same color? Are both these the same colorway? Which they are, all the way to the peg. So then I was able to pull it a little bit. If I needed to, I could have moved my table closer or further away. So it depends on the length of the color in the self-stripe that you have to adjust this to match. And so once again, I'm back to the burgundy, and I'm going to come up, and I think I need a little bit, I don't want it too tight because this has got some spring to it, so I don't want to lose too much of my tension. So that's starting. So then the next one, going in the slit again, I'm on a totally different color. It's more the charcoal looking colors. I'm going to go through, pull, loop on my peg, come back. My colors are doing great. They're still the same here and here. Looks like it's changing colors again. It might be to the burgundy again or a different tone. So then I'm going to pull this one. Nope, this one's changing to yellow. So let me check this one. But it's the same. It's got a little bit more yellow in the burgundy. Like I said, I've never done this before, so this is just, I just think it's really neat to watch the colors kind of evolve as you're doing this. We're going to do another loop. All right, so it's very subtle. Burgundy, like a cream color, another kind of a yellow tone now, this one, and then I think I'm back on yellow again. Once the peg is at the right place, you can actually see that their colors are going to stay in their same because the yarn is pretty consistent. It's not jumping from one color to the next. This one's definitely a lot more yellow. You can see that it was like a limey green, and now we're in a yellow part. More of a mustard color. After you have a little bit of this done, it's interesting to see how the colors are shifting. If you look down this way, I'm not sure if she can pause and actually see. So for this one, you can see, especially, it makes a beautiful warp. But you can actually see how this is definitely a self-striping one. I've got the white paper underneath it just to see. But it is a very speckled, earthy tone all the way through. And it's staying very consistent. So after we do half of it, we'll show you again, and then we're going to do the other half. And then once we have everything threaded, we're going to weave it for you and show you that. All right, so we're back. We're over halfway. And as you can see, we started out with different colors. Now yellow, orange, purple, and now we're actually going back to the brownie colors and maybe a pinky tone, which should be on the end of it. But when we get to here, I'm going to show you how to do a one strand. So we will be back. Okay, so we have done the whole warp, and why I say that is we have nothing left of the first ball, and I will say I'm about 2 or 3 slits short, okay, of being the full 8 inches. Now that doesn't mean it's not 220 yards. It could be because I did not pull this taunt, so that could very easily be. But I don't have enough to do the next pick, which is okay, because I have always, in my last pick or the last slit, I only put one, just one, not 2. So people always say, why? And I say, well, this one, the one single, is going to go in the hole. And every one of these is going to go in a hole, so therefore I'll have a hole with the string in it on the right side, and then I'll have a hole on the left side filled too. So with that, people say, how do you do that? So I take this one, instead of tying it on this, I'm coming all the way back to my peg down here. All right, so like I said, I'm taking this one and tying it here, not at the back beam. So don't do this, because that's not going to hold it. It's going to do exactly that. So take this, guesstimate what you need to do to make a knot. And so I do this, wrap it around, pinch it, pull it off. From this standpoint right here, I hold this. It looks like the number 6, or in your case, maybe a number 9. Take both of those, pull it through, make a big hole, and there you go. So now when I beam this, I have all of them contained together. made a nice warp. All right, so here's another little trick I usually do, and Shaq actually has an extra bar here. Some of the other rigid heddles don't have this, and you would do it on the back beam. So what I have is rubber bands. I actually am going to cut these. I do have just a pair at home that's bigger than this, but what I'm going to do is use this beam that's going across, and all I'm going to do is tie this like that. One side, and then on the next side. If you've talked to me on the phone, I've explained this, and some people are like, how do you do this? So what this is doing is that right now, if you were holding your warp, you want this edge to be perpendicular. You do not want it way out here and wind where it's wavering. So what these do is actually, it's just a guide. So what's going to happen is my thread will stay on this side of it, which will be perpendicular. So what you're trying to do is make sure that your rubber band is perpendicular to this thread right here. All right. If you were further out, your rubber band would be over here. Okay, the same with this one. And all it does is it allows, when you're winding, that the threads are going to wind on top of each other, and some aren't going to be thin over here and thick. And some people always want to know where the edges are tighter, and that's because a lot of times it's wound thinner on the back beam. So to illustrate what I mean by the single thread being in the slit, most people will thread to the right of it, okay? In this case, I'm going to go backwards, okay? Because I always start with my single thread, or I forget what my intended purpose was. So for this one, I'm going to go in this one, okay? And so sometimes it's harder the smaller you get. Sometimes you're trying to loop it on the side or pulling it through. I don't want to shred it. So my single that was actually in the slit is now in a hole. The next group, I'm going to pull one of these into the hole. Okay, so I can put this in. It just depends on which one. It doesn't matter in this one because they're pretty much well the same. Some people will pull it out and then rethread back in. I think that method can be ever how you want to do it. All right, so back to this one again. What this is going to do is allow for this selvage to remain in a hole, and when I get all the way over here to this side, one of these is going to be in a hole. So once again, both my selvage threads do have a heddle hole, which is going to allow for them to both go up and down at the same time, which keeps the same tension, which does help my selvages. So I'm at the very end. I've got 3 more to do. So I'm pulling this one out. I've got a whole thread. My next one. Pull that one out. And then my very last one ends in a hole. So this one ends in a hole, and this one ends in a hole. So both of these are going to be the same tension, up and down, up and down.